Hey guys. Tonight we plunge headfirst into the blistering sands and echoing tunnels of ancient Nubia, where gold glittered like a mirage on the horizon, and you find yourself squinting under a desert sun. The wind whips dust into every crevice of your face, and the earth beneath your feet seems to hum with the promise of wealth you've never felt. You clutch your crude pickaxe, wondering if this is somehow more glamorous than your cozy bed, or maybe not. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually value your sleep over fictitious riches. Oh, and don't forget to drop a comment with your location and local time so we can chart this cosmic map of insomniacs together. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're alive in a world where the Nile's tributaries carve a living out of an otherwise unforgiving land, where ancient Egyptians looked south for that shimmering yellow metal. Historians still argue whether Nubian gold mines were first exploited around 2000 BC or a couple centuries later. But either way, you're part of something massive, an enterprise stretching across shifting empires. The air tastes like iron, and each breath feels thick with promise and toil. You're not a pharaoh sipping cool wine, you're down in the depths of earth, chasing veins of gold under a sky so vast, it makes every droplet of sweat matter. Your day begins before dawn, the moment when desert nights yield to relentless daylight. You're jolted awake by a distant call from the watchmen, whose silhouettes stand guard atop mud brick towers. As you rub sleep from your eyes, you feel your heart thumping, a mix of dread and determination. You remind yourself, this gold is not for you. It's destined for the coffers of far-off kings or Kushite rulers, who'll mint shiny discs or weave it into intricate jewelry. A mainstream historical fact glimmers here. Nubian gold fueled Egypt's rise, flowing into tombs and temples of pharaohs who craved its brilliance. Yet your reality is dirtier, dustier, and far less adorned. You grab your tools, copper chisels and stone hammers, and make your way to the entrance of a mine shaft. The ground beneath your sandals is parched, the hard-baked clay cracking like a snare drum. The sun is still a pale promise on the horizon, but you know it will rise soon, heating the iron-red cliffs of the eastern desert. Even at this early hour, you can taste the grit settling in your throat. A fringe rumor floats among the miners that biting a lump of raw gold or cures headaches, an odd remedy passed down through whispered campfire tales. You'd laugh, except everyone's tried it, and Lord knows you can't afford a headache down here. As you descend into the shaft, torches flicker against dark walls, sending dancing shadows that look like ancient spirits. Your fingertips brush against jagged rock, each crevice possibly hiding a golden vein or just more barren quartz. The temperature shifts, growing cooler as the earth's embrace tightens around you. You release a shaky breath and begin to swing. Each crack and clang echoes off walls, reverberating in your skull. You've heard that some shafts extend over 100 feet deep, an astounding feat of early engineering. Yet you're not thinking about those measurements, you're thinking about the next break, the next sip of bitter water, and hoping your shoulders don't snap before the sun does. Your sweat beads on your forehead, then trickles past closed eyes, stinging them with dust. Blow after blow, you chip away, hoping that glint of gold will peek out like a revelation. Every so often, your metal chisel meets something harder than granite, sending a shiver up your arm. You grip it tighter, telling yourself it's just quartz. In truth, you're chasing the promise that these rocks hold gold. You know the tales. Those who struck big veins might be selected to travel north to Thebes as envoys or craftsmen. But most days, you find no more than dull rubble. Still, that scent of desperation and hope lingers in every inhalation. Above ground, the sun has climbed, turning the sky into a searing dome. You imagine how it looks to those who live by the Nile's generous banks, lush, peaceful, irrigated. Here, the desert offers no such comforts. Your stomach growls. Last night's meal of brittle flatbread and a sip of lukewarm sorghum beer feels like a distant memory. You trade salutes with a fellow miner as he treks past on his way down, balancing a jug of water he fetched before sunrise. The clink of pottery against stone is a small comfort. You gulp down cool water, tasting minerals that remind you of sweat and blood. A chewy hunk of dried fish helps quell your hunger, though it's as rough as sandpaper. Still, it keeps you going. There's a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye. Caravans crossing that distant horizon, laden with gold bricks bound for Egyptian markets. You've heard they'll melt these bars into thin sheets for decorating royal tombs or crafting the masks of pharaohs. You can almost feel the envy. Those elites live in opulence while you scrape every bit of worth from rock. Yet you also feel pride. Your labor, if successful, sustains the splendor of entire civilizations. A fleeting thought crosses your mind. Is this worth it? The muscles in your back ache, and blisters bloom like flowers on your palms. But you keep going, driven by the slim hope of gathering enough or to exchange for extra rations, or perhaps a few beaver skin beads at the trader's bazaar. When the midday sun reaches its peak, those above-ground watch posts become cruel sentinels, their eyes shielding them while you're left exposed. Sometimes, you glimpse a lion's tail on the horizon or hear the distant cry of vultures circling what you pray isn't a fallen laborer. A mainstream fact hums in your memory. Ancient Egyptians believed Nubia was the land of the bow, famed for its skilled archers, men as hardy as the land itself. You think you might be just as tough, but the desert has a way of humbling even giants. You wipe sweat from your brow, narrowly avoiding a scorpion slithering across your makeshift wooden board. Historians still argue whether Nubian miners possessed basic medical knowledge to treat these scorpion stings effectively. But today you slap on a poultice made from crushed figs and honey, an old remedy your grandmother swore by. Beneath your fingers, the poultice burns, but you grit your teeth and press on, believing it'll save your leg from infection. Facts and rumors blur here. Whispers say scarab beetles brought good luck if carried into the mines, a weird superstition that you half believe because, really, what else do you have? As the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in streaks of pink and orange, you emerge, dirt-smudged and bone-weary. The camps below the cliffs are alive with clamor, other miners greeting loved ones, laughter bubbling through dusty cheeks. Dinner is communal, a cauldron of watery stew. Bits of goat meat if you're lucky, and that same bitter beer. You share tales of narrow escapes and ghost stories. Some say the spirits of miners who perish still guard the richest veins, and at night, you can hear them tapping far below. A fringe tidbit goes that if you jingle a coin carved from pure Nubian gold beneath your pillow, you'll dream of striking it rich. You close your eyes, imagining that coin's weight and shimmer, even though sleep seldom comes easy after a day like this. Deep down, you know your toil is tiny compared to the grand narrative of empires rising and falling, the Nubian kingdoms of Kush challenging Egypt's hegemony with armies clad in leather and bronze. Yet right now, you're just you, the one digging, sweating, and hoping your battered hands won't betray you. You stand under a moon that seems painfully distant, a lone vigil for all who labor in darkness, literal and metaphorical. As you head back to your reed and mud shelter, crickets chirping like a lullaby you never requested, you wonder if this is how it has been for thousands of others, enduring, toiling, believing in something beyond the aching of limbs. Tomorrow, the cycle repeats. But for tonight you rest, eyes heavy, listening to distant temple bells that toll for gods you don't worship. You drift between dreams of gold and nightmares of suffocating collapse. And as the dawn of another grueling day prepares to break over the hills, you already feel a bittersweet sort of comfort. At least you tried. You wake before the sun even thinks about rising. The air is still and cold, almost mocking you for believing the desert is always hot. It won't last. In a couple of hours, this chill will be gone, replaced by a sky so bright and a ground so hot it could fry the soles off your sandals. You shuffle toward the ridge where the day's assignment has been etched into a slat of stone. Today, you're sent east, to the edge of the known quarry field, where the bedrock gets nastier and the gold gets stingier. You cross a dry ravine, bones aching, jaws set. As your feet crunch over loose gravel, you feel it, the unforgiving geology that made Nubia both a blessing and a curse. There's gold in these hills. Yes, but not the kind that lounges in riverbeds waiting for you. No, Nubian gold hides deep within the rock, tiny flecks tucked inside hard quartz, like stubborn glitter lodged in concrete. The earth here isn't generous. It's a vault. And your job is to break into it using a glorified rock on a stick. The Eastern Desert, part of what modern geologists call the Arabian-Nubian Shield, is rich in volcanic formations that cooled long before anyone had the bright idea of melting metal. The gold here fused into quartz veins millions of years ago, scattered irregularly like someone sneezed a fortune and buried the evidence. That's what makes today miserable. You're not just digging, you're gambling against geology. Every swing of your pick might find a sliver of wealth, or just chip another day off your life. And the earth doesn't give you any hints. Quartz doesn't sparkle until it's washed and split, and even then it lies. Sometimes you'll work all day on a promising vein only to find it leads nowhere, a geological prank that no one finds funny. Sometimes it seems the rocks themselves are mocking you, the way they split just wrong, crumbling when they should crack cleanly. A miner nearby curses loudly in the distance. You don't even glance. There are probably a dozen reasons for that yell, none of them good. There's a moment when you pause, staring at a particularly stubborn boulder. You've seen it before. Or one just like it. The way it sits like a smug little king at the center of your shaft, daring you to waste another hour. You swing anyway. Dust explodes with each strike. Your lungs tighten, coated in a mineral haze so thick you taste iron when you breathe. No masks, of course. Just a scrap of cloth over your face, and that's only if you remember to bring one. Some don't bother anymore. Better to die tasting gold, they say, though most know they'll die coughing, not counting coins. Above you, the sky begins to shift from gray to gold, and for a second you wonder if it's symbolic, like the heavens are mocking you too. But no, it's just sunlight slashing through the jagged cliffs, baking everything in sight. You're sweating before it even hits your back. You squint up at a watchman, perched like a vulture on a ridge. His job is to make sure nobody pockets a flake of ore. That happens more than you'd expect. You'd try it too if you weren't so convinced the overseers counted every speck. Another miner shuffles over, holding out a palm. In it sits what looks like a breadcrumb, if breadcrumbs were metallic and precious. You lean in, inspecting the nugget, and your heart jumps. Real gold. Not much, but enough to bring a smile to a face gone crusty with exhaustion. The two of you exchange nods. In another time and place, this would be a celebration. Here, it just means your shift has meaning now. Maybe someone will get an extra scoop of porridge for this. Maybe. You go back to your corner, a spot barely wide enough to swing your pick without scraping your knuckles. You attack a crack in the stone, chasing a gold streak you spotted earlier. A trick of light? Maybe. But you don't care. You've heard of people following the same vein for weeks. Some even carve names into the wall when they strike a lucky pocket. Not you. Not yet. The sun climbs, and your body screams louder with each hour. You start to notice the signs. Your hands tremble, your breath shortens. Heatstroke doesn't come with a warning. It creeps in like a snake in the sand. So you force yourself to stop. You dig out the water flask tucked in the folds of your belt and take a swig. The water is warm now, sun-warmed like soup, but it's better than nothing. You splash a little on your face and let it evaporate. Nearby, an elder miner mutters to himself, something about a rock spirit hiding the gold when it senses bad intentions. You roll your eyes but don't say anything. He's survived longer than most. And you've heard stranger things, like the belief that certain rocks hum when they're near gold, though you've never heard anything but your own ragged breathing. You take a break under a narrow overhang, a rare sliver of shade. Your back is soaked. Your arms shake from the effort. But you can't stop staring at the rock wall. It's a mess of color and texture, layers of brown, streaks of rust, shimmering grains so faint you have to squint. You run your fingers over it, feeling not just the roughness but the weight of ages. You're not the first to dig here. The walls bear scratch marks older than any king whose name you know. Some even claim these mines go back further than recorded Nubian history, that the first miners were guided by stars or spirits, or maybe just dumb luck. Eventually, you're ordered to haul your findings back to the surface. You stagger out into blinding light, blinking against the glare. You dump your basket, filled with mostly useless stone and a few hopeful fragments, onto a communal pile. The overseers inspect it quickly, giving you the nod. No punishment today. You make your way back to the encampment. Every step grinds dust into the soles of your feet. You pass a boy using a makeshift broom to sweep gold dust from the sieves where crushed ore is sorted. You remember doing that, before your back could handle a full-sized pick. The cycle continues, as it always does. You wonder if that kid will still be here when he's your age, swinging at rocks that won't split. Dinner is rough, just as you expect. A lump of barley porridge, maybe a sliver of dried fig if you're lucky. Around the fire, someone cracks a joke about how the rocks must have ears, because they always go quiet when a new overseer shows up. You chuckle weakly. It's a bad joke, but it's something. As the stars prick the sky, someone starts humming a tune. No one knows where it came from, but it's old, and it settles into your bones like a blanket. You lie down on your mat, staring at the constellations above. Someone swears the Orion belt points to the richest veins. You don't believe it, not really. But tonight you let the idea sit with you, just in case the stars really are listening. The morning feels different today. The sky's a little cloudier, still hot, still dry, but something's off. The air holds a strange tension, like it's bracing for bad news. You wake with a start, your mat gritty with sand, and the whisper among the early risers makes your stomach twist, a collapse in the west shaft. They don't know how many are trapped. You move faster than usual, skipping your first sip of water. The paths toward the mining zones are more crowded than usual. No one says much. Just the occasional clank of metal, the shuffle of sandals, and that low murmur that spreads like smoke through the camp. Speculation, blame, worry. You knew those shafts were risky. Too deep. Too fast, and barely reinforced. But when the overseers want gold, they don't want to hear excuses about safety. You're not in that shaft, but that doesn't bring comfort. You've stood where they stood. You've swung your pick under those same cracked beams. It could have been you. That's the thought that lingers, like a pebble in your sandal you can't quite shake loose. You glance up at the cliffs and see one of the guards watching the horizon, pretending not to care. He's chewing on something, maybe fig bark, and looking utterly bored. The guy could be watching birds. Meanwhile, someone might be gasping for breath under a mountain of stone. By mid-morning, a rescue crew is being assembled, if you can call it that. A few strong miners, a rope, and one splintered pulley system held together by prayer and dry knots. You're not chosen, which is somehow worse than being picked. You want to help, but you also don't want to be the next one buried. So instead, you're ordered to the processing zone, where ore is broken down into fine dust for washing. This is the part of mining they never talk about when gold is displayed in temples or worn by royalty. Crushing the ore. It's monotonous, dirty work that saps the soul. You sit at a grinding station with a flat slab of basalt and a round stone the size of a melon. Your job? Reduce gold-laced quartz into powder. Over and over. Hours pass. Dust rises with each grind, tickling your nose, coating your tongue. There's no glamour here, no shine, just sweat and repetition. The sound of the stone against stone becomes a rhythm, almost like a drumbeat. You fall into it. It's mindless, but there's something soothing about it. You lose track of time. That is, until a low horn call echoes through the gorge. Everyone stops grinding. One long tone, bad news. A second follows. Worse. You hear footsteps running, but you stay seated. You know the truth without being told. the west shaft rescue failed. The ones trapped are now entombed. You grind harder, jaw clenched, wishing the rock would scream back. As the sun slants west, casting long shadows that make the cliffs look like folded paper, you're given a short break. You make your way toward the edge of camp where a small shrine stands, simple, just a few stacked stones and a carved figure worn by sand. It's not one of the Egyptian gods. This one's older, Nubian. A lion-headed spirit, maybe, or some half-forgotten desert guardian. People still leave offerings here, beads, scraps of cloth, even bread. You drop a small quartz chip at its feet, not gold-bearing, but it sparkles in the light. A kind of apology. Or a plea. Back at camp, the mood is heavy. No music tonight, no jokes. Just murmurs and a pot of lentils simmering over low flame. You eat quietly, surrounded by others doing the same, each person wrapped in their own thoughts. You remember one of the lost miners, a young guy, barely a man, who used to hum while he worked. His song got stuck in your head last week. You hum it now, low and quiet, unsure if you're honoring or haunting him. By nightfall, the camp overseer finally speaks. Not to mourn. No, to warn. He says safety must improve, but so must productivity. More gold is expected. Always more. The tone is clear, don't let this happen again, but also don't slow down. You exchange glances with a friend nearby. He raises an eyebrow. Nothing changes. Not really. As you lay on your mat that night, staring up at the stars, you feel the weight of it pressing down. The rocks above and around you aren't just natural, they're history's pressure cooker, squeezing life out of workers and squeezing wealth into crowns. A mainstream fact floats up in your memory. The kingdom of Kush, based in Nubia, once ruled over all of Egypt during the 25th dynasty. They wore gold not just as wealth, but as proof of divine favor. That gold probably came from these same mines, dug by people like you. You wonder what they'd think if they saw you now, those ancient kings, those smug pharaohs. Would they honor your labor? Your scars, your lost companions? Or would they just ask if the next shipment's ready? There's a popular campfire tale whispered after disasters like today. It goes like this: the mines have moods. Sometimes they hunger. They take people, not out of malice, but as payment. A tithe. Keep the gold flowing, and maybe the mountain sleeps. Disappointed, and the rocks collapse. It's not logical. Not even remotely geological. But when your shift is deep and the walls creak, it doesn't feel like nonsense. You fall asleep thinking of that, of voices echoing through dark tunnels and gold veins that pulse like arteries, alive with ancient greed. You hope tomorrow is quieter. You hope you're not next. The next morning arrives with the scent of ash still clinging to your skin. Not from fire. There hasn't been wood to spare for a proper blaze in weeks. But from the smoldering grief hanging over camp like invisible smoke. The memory of the shaft collapse is still fresh, and the desert doesn't offer distractions. It just stares back at you, hot and silent, daring you to do something other than work. Today, you're being moved again, not down into the mine this time, but up toward the sorting fields where the day's crushed or is sifted and washed. It sounds easier than hammering stone all day, but don't be fooled. You'll be squatting under the sun for hours, flicking gritty dust through your fingers, hoping it glimmers. And glimmer it must. If the day's yield is light, someone pays. Usually not in coins. You're handed a wide, shallow pan, carved from cedar, surprisingly, and pointed toward a muddy trench. The water there is reused, murky, and smells faintly of iron and feet. You kneel beside it, your knees digging into pebbles, and start the sifting dance. It's a motion you know by muscle: swirl, settle, tilt. Let the heavy bits drop. Watch. Hope. Repeat. It's tedious, meditative even, until you remember what you're doing. You're praying to find specks of a metal so soft you can bend it with your teeth. And somehow, this shimmering nonsense controls kings, builds temples, and buys entire lives. You shake the pan, laughing under your breath. Imagine explaining this to someone who's never seen gold. We scrape mountains apart, ruin our lungs, and fight over which tiny yellow dot belongs to who. It would sound ridiculous. Because it is. You're not alone here. A dozen others are lined up beside you, women, men, even a boy barely into his teens. His fingers are cut and raw. You notice a fly land on his wrist and just stay there. He doesn't even flinch. That's how tired you are out here. Even the insects get a free pass. Someone next to you starts coughing. A deep, rattling hack that sounds like they're mining their own lungs. You glance over. He waves you off, but his skin's got that gray sheen. You've seen it before. Silicosis, though no one here calls it that. You call it rock lung. Happens to the best. Too much dust over too many days, and suddenly breathing becomes a full-time job. You feel your own chest tighten in sympathy. As the sun climbs, so does your frustration. You find slivers of mica that tease you, shining like treasure, but worthless. One man yells excitedly, holding up a flake the size of a fingernail. It glints beautifully, then crumbles. Pyrite. Fool's gold. The nickname always seemed cruel out here. You wonder who first coined it. Probably someone safe in a palace. By midday, you're allowed a break, barely 10 minutes. You crawl to the edge of a wind-carved rock and sit, panting. Someone passes around a lump of dried dates, sticky with sweat from too many hands. You chew one slowly, the sugar waking your brain for a moment. Then comes the stories. It always happens during breaks, the tales too absurd to believe but too old to ignore. Today's favorite? The legend of a cursed seam of gold hidden deep in the earth, one that drives men mad when they find it. Supposedly, a whole team of miners once vanished trying to chase it. Some say it wasn't even real gold, just obsidian layered with mica, dark as night. Cold to the touch, but with a shine that made you forget your own name. You pretend not to care, but your ears stay open. You've heard different versions of that story since your first day. And then, out of nowhere, a wild claim from the old woman beside you. She says she once saw a bird, maybe a hawk or a desert falcon, drop a nugget of gold into the streambed. Just like that. No digging, no tools. The gods, she says, always share their wealth with the animals first. The rest of us just pick through their leftovers. You shake your head, amused. Maybe I should have been born a bird, you say. She grins. Too late for that. You're stuck being stubborn. The sun slides westward, and you're back to work. Your shoulders ache from hunching. Your wrists are stiff. But you keep swirling the pan, watching the slurry for flashes. Sometimes, just sometimes, you find it, a glint that doesn't wash away. Your heart jumps. You lean closer. Yes. It's real. A flake, tiny as a fingernail clipping, but solid. You set it aside gently, like a sacred object. Later, a supervisor arrives. He's more ornamental than helpful, draped in a linen sash dyed with ochre. He inspects the trays, nods slowly, and says nothing. Just leaves. No good job, no thank you. Just observation. You could be furniture for all he seems to care. You get the feeling he noticed a missing gold flake before he noticed a missing miner. You remember something whispered around the campfire once, that some of the overseers are actually slaves too, higher-ranking ones, rewarded for obedience. It's never confirmed. But the idea stings. That even if you claw your way up the chain, you're still in it. Still a cog. Just one that yells now instead of swings. As twilight approaches, you help carry the gold dust to the melting area. It's another awful process. Fires fed with dried animal dung, bellows pumping rhythmically while the ore is heated, purified, poured into molds. You watch the flakes you gathered vanish into the crucible, glowing white-hot. They'll be weighed, divided, and sent on their way, to temples, to kings, to places you'll never see. You get none of it. Not even a thank you. Just a smear of soot on your hands and the vague satisfaction that you didn't mess up. That night, after dinner, thin porridge with the flavor of boiled sadness, you lay on your mat, muscles twitching from overuse. You stare into the dark. And you think about gold. Not the metal, but the idea of it. This stuff you chase through rock and water like it's holy. You think about how it's not just shiny, it's heavy. Not in weight, but in meaning. In cost. In blood. You start to drift, head buzzing with fragments of stories and dreams. Somewhere, you hear someone whisper, gold was the first god. You don't know if they meant it metaphorically or literally. But either way, it feels true. You wake up shivering. Not from cold, no, the desert never truly cools, but from something else. A dream you can't quite remember, just the lingering feel of sand slipping through your fingers and the weight of something watching. It's still dark. The camp stirs slowly, the stars just beginning to fade in the pale hint of dawn. Today, you're heading back underground. Not the west shaft, the one that took lives, but another, older one. They call it the Crooked Eye. No one likes the Crooked Eye. It bends halfway through, sloping weirdly like it's been twisted by the gods. Some say it was carved too quickly, or too greedily, and the mountain got angry. Others claim it wasn't carved at all. Just revealed, a natural cave filled with gold veins. But no one's quite sure. Historians still argue whether the Nubians developed these mines independently or if they adapted techniques from Egyptian influence. Your body aches before you even start. The tools you carry, just a pick, a chipped chisel, and a palm-wrapped mallet, weigh heavier than they should. You trudge toward the mouth of the Crooked Eye with a few others. No one talks much. Not even the ones who usually joke to shake off the fear. That silence is worse than any words. Inside, it's a breathless kind of dark. The air is still, thick with dust that never seems to settle. You're handed a reed torch, already burning low, and crouched through the narrow entry. The heat wraps around you, heavier underground. The ceiling lowers until you feel like a beetle scuttling through a crack. It's quiet in here, too quiet. You've been underground before, but this place. It hums. Not a sound exactly, more like a presence. As if the walls are listening. You don't tell anyone that, of course. You just start to work. The Crooked Eye doesn't give up its gold easily. You chip and hammer at veins barely visible to your torch's glow, chasing traces of yellow that vanish when touched. The rocks here are sharp and mean. You've seen them bite through sandals, even cut through pick handles. You whisper under your breath while you strike, like it helps. Maybe it does. The man next to you, old, with fingers like twisted roots, points to a narrow fault line above your head. That's where the real stuff runs, he mutters. But if you go too far, it'll all come down. You nod like you already knew that. You didn't. Not really. But you keep going, carving along the line like it's a puzzle, trying to coax the treasure out without waking whatever spirits might be slumbering behind the rock. Hours pass in flickers of torchlight and muscle memory. Sweat stings your eyes. The torch burns lower. You wonder how long it's been. There's no time down here, just the next blow, the next breath, the next thud of metal on stone. You finally get a break. Back near the entrance, there's a little ledge where a few others sit, drinking from cracked gourds. The water tastes like copper. You don't care. You slump beside them, breathing heavy, heart knocking against your ribs. Someone's humming, low and off-key. It's a lullaby, maybe. Or a warning. Then, a strange story surfaces, about miners who found a tunnel so perfectly square it couldn't have been made by humans. Too clean. Too smooth. They say it went on for miles, lined with a soft glow like moonlight. The story ends in different ways depending on who tells it. Some say the miners walked until they vanished. Others say they came back with skin like gold leaf and eyes that wouldn't close. You roll your eyes. But deep down, a part of you wonders. The Crooked Eye could hide anything. The fringe theories always find space in these minds. No one trusts the official accounts. That's why people tell tales about ancient maps hidden in temple walls, or cursed amulets buried in tailings, or tunnels that lead to the afterlife if you know which hand to touch the stone with. You don't believe most of it. But there's one story that gets to you. It's about a miner who left a message scratched deep into the rock, somewhere in the back tunnels. A warning. Just one sentence, gold listens. No one knows what it means. But every time you find yourself alone underground, you remember it. And you stop humming. Back at work, the shift supervisor yells for more progress. His voice echoes weirdly in the stone. You turn back to the vein you were carving, pick in hand, wrist sore and shoulders stiff. There's a flicker. Not of light, but something in the rock. A tiny shimmer. You hit it once, carefully, and it flakes. A small fragment falls into your palm, rough-edged but gleaming. Real gold. You pocket it carefully in the collection pouch. It will be logged later, weighed with the others. None of it yours. Still, the discovery carries a small thrill. You found it. Your hands. Your sweat. It'll go somewhere far from here, to someone who will never know your name. But for now, for this breath of time, it was yours. Then comes the noise. A sharp crack like dry wood snapping. You freeze. Everyone does. Another crack. The sound of shifting rock unmistakable. Your heart hammers. Not again. You remember the collapse. The silence after. You grab your torch and listen. A whisper of dust falls from the ceiling, a slow hiss. But nothing breaks. Not yet. The shaft settles. Someone lets out a long breath, shaky. You keep working, more gently now. No one wants to anger the crooked eye. When the call finally comes to exit, you're more grateful than usual. You shuffle out with the others, blinking in the harsh light of dusk. The wind outside feels like ice after the oven of the tunnel. You stretch your spine, muscles protesting. Someone laughs, probably at nothing. Relief always comes with a weird kind of giddiness. At dinner, the mood is quieter. No singing, but no mourning either. Just the rhythm of survival. You sit with a few others and eat millet porridge with dried okra. It's bland but filling. You stare into the fire afterward, brain too tired to hold thoughts. You just watch the flames flicker and wonder what the gold will become. A crown? A statue? A coin someone tosses without looking? You remember the phrase, gold listens. Maybe it does. Maybe it hears every pick stroke, every cough, every whispered curse in the tunnels. And maybe, one day, it will speak back. You dream of rivers, not the real kind, nothing like the dry, cracked trickles near the camp, but wide, endless flows of shining liquid, like melted gold. They coil and twist through your mind, warm and slow, whispering secrets you forget as soon as you wake. It's always the same, a voice calling from the current, just out of reach. Then the sand in your eyes, the cough in your throat, and the blunt thud of reality waking you. Another day. This morning you're assigned to hauling. The work sounds simple. Move broken ore and crushed rock from the lower shafts to the surface. What it actually means is this. You'll be dragging baskets of debris up narrow ramps, your spine bent like a bow. Feet slipping on stone dust. It's not glamorous. Then again, what out here is, you're given a basket woven from palm fiber, scratchy and stiff. The bottom's already stained red from iron-rich dirt. It smells faintly of sweat and something worse. You don't ask what. The guy next to you hands you a length of rope to sling it across your back. Try not to drop it, he mutters, or they'll make you sweep the whole shaft for flakes. Your legs already ache, and you haven't even started. Down you go. The ramps twist and dip, some so steep you have to slide sideways to keep your footing. Every now and then, a gust of hot air whooshes past your face, pockets of built-up heat escaping from the deeper levels. There's no breeze down here. No birdsong. Just the scrape of feet, the rattle of stone, and the occasional grunted warning as someone rounds a corner too fast with a full load. The real pain starts on your third trip up. The first is adrenaline. The second is stubbornness. The third? That's when your body starts negotiating. Maybe if you move slower. Maybe if you don't bend so much. Maybe if you pretend it doesn't hurt, it won't. None of that works, of course. But you keep going. You pass a carved mark in the stone near the shaft entrance. Just a swirl, 3 loops inside each other, like a coiled snake. Someone told you it was an old Nubian protection symbol, meant to guard the workers from cave-ins or spirits. Others say it's graffiti from someone who went too long without sunlight. Either way, you touch it every time you pass. Just in case. By midday, your back feels like it's been folded in half. You sit in the shade of a broken column, probably left from a collapsed scaffolding. The wind whistles faintly outside the tunnel entrance. You chew a bit of dried sorghum, trying not to choke on the dust coating your tongue. You hear voices drifting from further up the shaft, someone telling a story again. It's about a foreign envoy, maybe Egyptian, maybe not, who once came to inspect the mines. He supposedly brought perfume, honey, even papyrus scrolls scented with cinnamon. But when he descended into the mines, he lasted only an hour before demanding to be pulled out. The legend goes, he fainted halfway up the ramp and woke crying. Not from pain, but from understanding. No metal, he said, should cost this much. You shake your head. You've never seen an Egyptian cry. Then there's the stranger story. A whispered rumor passed around by younger workers. They say there's a secret chamber somewhere deep in the rock, one not on any map. No one works there officially, but people claim to have seen flickering light through cracks. Heard tools clinking with no hands to swing them. One said he caught a glimpse of a man, tall, bare-chested, skin smeared in ash, who vanished into the wall like smoke. The idea, apparently, is that some souls never left the mine. They just kept mining. You brush the thought away like an irritating gnat. Superstition. But still, on your 6th trip up, when you feel a brush of wind that doesn't match the air currents, you glance behind you. Just for a second. In the afternoon, you're assigned a partner. He's older, his face like weathered wood, and walks with a limp. Says he's been in the mines for 20 years. You ask if it ever gets easier. He snorts. Your body gets worse. But your mind stops fighting. He shares his water with you, lukewarm, but sweeter than your own. Tells you he once saw a nugget the size of a goat's heart. Didn't get to keep it, of course. But they let him eat meat that night. Real meat. Just once. On the 8th haul, your knees almost give out. You stumble, and the basket tips. A few small chunks of ore bounce free. You scramble to catch them, heart pounding. If a supervisor sees it, you'll be punished. Not with a whip, no. That's too obvious, but with extra opportunity. You'll be given the worst jobs, the deepest holes, the sickest carts. Slowly, quietly, like rot, you manage to recover them. Just in time. The older man gives you a look, not pity exactly, just recognition. He knows what close calls feel like. As the sun lowers, the hauls finally stop. Your legs twitch with exhaustion. You sit on a rock outside the shaft and press your forehead to your knees. You're covered in dirt, sweat, and whatever passed for pride hours ago. It's all the same color now. Someone walks by singing softly in an old tongue. You don't know the words, but the melody's simple, almost childish. It reminds you of home, if not a place. Then a time. A feeling before the mines. Over dinner, the topic shifts again. This time, what happens if you try to escape? No one says it outright, but everyone knows someone who tried. They never come back. Some say they die in the desert, sunburned, thirsty, bones picked clean. Others say they're caught and buried alive in the tailings pit as a warning. The morning slaps you awake with wind and grit. You blink into the light, your lashes crusted with sleep and stone dust. Your muscles feel carved from clay, stiff, cracked, barely holding shape. But there's no time for stretching or small talk. Today, you've been assigned to a slag crew. If hauling crushed rock was brutal, slag work is its sweatier, smokier cousin. You're not just gathering ore anymore. You're working at the crude furnaces, where the magic, or the misery, really happens. Where rock becomes wealth. At least, wealth for someone else. The Nubians, long before anyone gave them credit, mastered an art few modern people could replicate without YouTube and goggles. They created rudimentary smelting systems out in this godless nowhere. Using clay ovens, foot bellows, and sheer desperation. You've seen the chimneys. Crooked stacks of mud brick belching sour smoke like diseased lungs. You follow the group past the familiar mines and into the smelting pit, a low, blackened depression near the edge of camp. Everything here is coated in ash. The ground is soft with it, like walking on powdered bone. And the heat. Sweet ancestors, the heat. It's not the dry, baking kind you're used to. It clings, sticky and oily, pressing against your chest like a wet rag. Already your tunic's damp, already you're coughing. You're shown your post, tending the bellows. It sounds almost ceremonial, doesn't it? Like you're conducting a forge. A sacred ritual. In truth, it's the ancient equivalent of being told to squat and stomp leather bags full of hot air for hours while sparks spit at your legs. Your partner is a boy no older than 12, his knees covered in ash, his eyes bloodshot from smoke. He doesn't speak. Just nods when you sit down and begins pumping with the rhythm of someone who's forgotten he ever had a choice. You join in. The furnace itself is a squat dome, open at the top, a few clay bricks glowing red from within. Ore is shoveled in from the side, crushed into gravel, mixed with charcoal, and dumped with little ceremony. The fire hisses, angry and alive. Occasionally, someone prods the mix with a long stick to keep the contents from solidifying too fast. The entire operation is controlled chaos. Like trying to cook bread in a volcano with nothing but hope and curses. You watch as the slag, waste from the melting process, oozes out the side, thick and dark like blood from a wound. It hardens quickly on the ground into black, brittle puddles. That's your next job: break the slag, collect the usable leftovers. And don't inhale too deeply. A simple 3-step plan to avoid poisoning, but no promises. There's a man at the far end of the pit wearing an amulet shaped like a scarab beetle. He never speaks, but people defer to him. He's the smelter chief, or whatever the local term is. Some say he talks to the fire. Others say he used to be one of the miners, until a cave-in buried his brothers and he never went back underground. Now, he just watches the flame. You see him pour a ladle of molten gold into a clay mold. The glow is mesmerizing, pure, liquid light. The mold spits once, as if alive, then settles. That little bar will cool and be packed and disappear. You'll never see it again. Here's the cruel truth. Most gold mined in ancient Nubia didn't stay in Nubia. Egyptian pharaohs demanded tribute. Traders skimmed off the top. Foreign raiders came sniffing like vultures. The very metal pulled from these hills often ended up decorating the tombs of people who had never lifted a pickaxe in their lives. And yet, here you are. Feeding a fire with your feet, lungs filling with ghosts. During a short break, you slump against a slag pile. It crackles beneath you, still hot. You notice a chunk that glints strangely. You break it open with a rock. Inside? A tiny golden filament, twisted like thread. You slip it into your pouch. You know it'll be found and confiscated eventually, but for now, it's a secret. A flicker of rebellion. Someone nearby tells a story to pass the time. About a man who stole a gold nugget from the smelter. They say he swallowed it to hide it. That night, his stomach burst into flame. Maybe from the heat of the fire gods, maybe from the molten power he dared to hold. No one found the nugget. Some think it melted back into the earth. Others say it fused with his spine and turned him into a walking curse. You smile, just barely. It's absurd. And yet, you keep your pouch tightly knotted. The afternoon wears on. The air gets worse. The wind changes, and smoke rolls back into camp. Visibility drops. A man next to you stumbles into a hot slag pile, yelping and tearing at his sandal. Blisters bloom instantly. No medics, just a rag soaked in goat fat and grit your teeth advice. By evening, your throat feels raw and lined with charcoal. Your hands are black. Your legs tremble when you stand. Someone hands out water. It tastes like smoke. You drink anyway. Back at your tent, you sit in silence for a while, letting the sweat dry. You dump the ash from your sandals and shake the filaments from your hair. Everything smells of burned stone. Everything looks gray. But then you remember something the old smelter told you, once, when he was less withdrawn. He said, gold isn't born. It suffers. Just like us. It's a strange comfort, in a way. You're not just toiling. You're shaping something that remembers pain. Something that carries the memory of heat and pressure and labor. Maybe that's why gold glows, because it's haunted by the fire it survived. You fall asleep wondering how many hands touched the same gold before it reached the Pharaohs. And how many ghosts followed it there. The wind carries a new smell today, less ash, more iron. It rides into camp before dawn, curling through the tents and dragging your dreams out with it. You wake with a dry tongue and a sore neck. The call comes early, maintenance duty. A change of pace, you think. Until you see the tools. They hand you a wooden mallet with a cracked handle and a chisel so blunt it might as well be a spoon. Your job? Clean the access paths. That's code for chipping hardened slag and rock crust from the shaft entrances and sidewalls. Those thin veins of buildup that, if left too long, can block a cart or snap an ankle. It's dull work. No sparkle, no fire. Just tapping and scraping in the dark. Your first target is a patch near the northeast entrance. The crust is black and rough, like dried lava. You squat low, feeling the heat radiate from yesterday's smelting. Every strike echoes strangely, as if the rock is hollow beneath. You pause, then strike again. The vibration runs up your arm. Odd. But you keep going. Around you, the others work in silence, each with their own patch of crust. Occasionally someone curses as a flake breaks off and scrapes their wrist. Your hands throb after the first hour, your knuckles swollen and red. You switch grip positions like you're playing some miserable version of finger yoga. But there's a rhythm to it. Strike, scrape. Tap, chip. You lose yourself in the repetition. You think of nothing. You feel your body move, but your mind drifts. You imagine the gold, veins winding deep inside the mountain like buried lightning. And you're just a speck on its skin, scratching at centuries. A boy nearby, same one from the bellows, starts humming. It's barely audible over the tapping. A simple melody. You don't recognize it, but the tune gets stuck in your head. You find yourself tapping to its beat, unconsciously shaping the stone with music. After a while, someone brings a cart over, wooden, missing one wheel. You and two others load the chiseled debris into it. It's mostly useless, but every now and then a glint catches the light. Gold dust. Not enough to keep. But enough to remind you why you're here. You're assigned to another entrance after lunch. Deeper, narrower, less used. The air here is cooler, damper. The torchlight flickers against old carvings on the stone walls, markings left by miners long dead. You trace a few with your fingertips, spirals, stars, lines that look like rivers. One looks like a face. The nose is chipped off. A theory floats among the workers. These carvings aren't just decoration. They're warnings. This tunnel's cursed. That one collapsed twice. Don't enter here unless you've made peace with your ancestors. It's superstition. But you choose a different wall to chip at anyway. Halfway through the shift, your chisel catches something soft. You stop. Wipe the sweat from your brow. Brush the dust away. It's not gold. It's not rock. It's fabric. Embedded in the stone. You call over your supervisor. He frowns, kneels, digs with a more careful hand. A few minutes later, he exhales sharply. Buried inside the crust is a bundle of cloth, badly decayed, but still recognizable. Wrapped around what looks like bone. Small. Child-sized. The camp goes quiet. You learn later that this isn't the first time. Over the decades, the mines have revealed more than gold. Human remains turn up like bad memories. Some say they're old sacrifices, people buried to feed the mountain. Others say they're just forgotten workers, sealed in by cave-ins no one had the time or will to clear. Historians still argue whether ancient Nubians used ritual burial at mines or whether these bodies are just victims of neglect, lost in the bowels of the industry. But down here, no one cares much about scholarly debates. All you know is that there's a reason some shafts are sealed with prayer stones and not picks. You can't unsee that bundle. For the rest of the day, every chip of stone feels like peeling back skin. The supervisors keep you working, no dramatic shutdowns. A shallow trench is dug nearby, and the remains are quietly relocated. A few workers pour water on the ground, muttering things too quiet to hear. You do the same. It feels wrong not to. That night, no one talks much. Even the men who usually argue about camel prices or joke about snake bites sit silently over dinner. You eat bread and roasted lentils with your hands. You chew slowly. Each bite tastes like ash. Later, someone lights a small fire near the center of camp. Not for cooking. Just for watching. You sit with a few others in a circle, letting the flames warm your face. No one says what they're thinking. But you know, there's a moment, brief, quiet, when the wind stills, and the embers drift straight upward, glowing like stars. A man beside you finally speaks. The mountain keeps what it wants, he says. You nod. That sounds about right. And yet, you'll return tomorrow. You'll chip, scrape, haul, sweat. Because that's what everyone does. Because that's what gold demands. Before you sleep, you take a small piece of stone from your pouch. Not gold. Just a shard from the wall where you found the cloth. You set it near your bedding. A marker. A reminder. In this place, history isn't written, it's buried. And if you're not careful, you'll become part of it. You wake to the sound of coughing, not your own, though it soon will be. Someone outside is hacking up a lung, a ragged, painful bark that carries clear through the tent flaps. You recognize the rhythm. That's old Derek, the one who brags about knowing the gold song, a chant supposedly whispered by the earth itself. Except now, it's not gold he's whispering. It's blood in his throat. You step outside. The camp's quieter than usual. No morning chatter, no clang of tools, not even the whistle that usually calls everyone to the quarry. Something's off. The air has a yellow tint, heavy with dust and soot. You taste metal on your tongue. You're not alone in noticing. Eyes scan the horizon, squinting past the shimmer of heat. Is it a sandstorm? No, there's no wind. Just a stillness that makes the skin crawl. Turns out, a tunnel collapsed overnight. Not one you've worked in, thankfully. But close enough that you recognize some of the names they're reading off the survivor list. The rest? Unaccounted for. Trapped, maybe. Crushed, probably. The odds of rescue aren't great. Not with the tools you've got. There's no ceremony. No moment of silence. Just a shift in the schedule. The mine entrance needs to be reinforced. Debris has to be cleared. You're drafted for both. By mid-morning, you're hauling wooden beams and clay bricks to the outer shaft, supervised by a pair of grumpy foremen who argue about how steep the incline should be. You overhear one of them mutter, "This tunnel's cursed. Should have been sealed years ago." The other snorts and spits. Cursed or not, there's still gold in it. That's the bottom line. Always. You spend the day sweating through your clothes, stacking bricks like tomb builders. Occasionally you pass a collapsed section and catch a glimpse of twisted beams, half-buried pickaxes, and once, a sandal. Just one, upright in the dust like its owner might come back for it any minute. Like its owner might come back for it any minute. Here's the paradox no one talks about. For all the sophistication of Nubian mining, ventilation shafts, drainage channels, even primitive pulleys, the tech still relied heavily on brute labor. No magical solutions. Just bones breaking against rock. And they kept digging anyway, because gold wasn't just currency, it was proof. Proof of power, of devotion, of divine favor. Pharaohs measured their worth by it. Nubian kings proved their independence with it. And poor miners? They were just the delivery system. Later, while moving buckets of wet clay, you pause near a slope carved into the wall, barely wide enough to crawl through. You're told it leads to an older section, unused for years. Someone once found a figurine there, a small bronze cat, perfectly preserved. No one knows what it was doing in a gold mine, but it's been missing ever since. Probably traded away or kept as a lucky charm. Or maybe it walked off on its own. One of the elders claims the cat was a guardian spirit, left to watch over the greedy. Another guy says it was a bribe to keep the tunnel from collapsing. Either way, no one wants to go back in. But as superstition grows, so does something else, theft. Gold goes missing. Not bars or nuggets, those are tracked too closely, but flakes. Dust. Trinkets carved from scrap. Nothing obvious. But just enough that the guards start getting twitchy. You hear whispers of body searches at shift changes. Of late-night interrogations. Of the pit. No one defines what that is, but the name alone is enough to silence a conversation. One evening, during a quiet meal, someone mentions the name Aset. Not a goddess this time, but a worker. One who vanished 3 nights ago. No accident, they say. She found a vein of near-pure gold and made the mistake of telling someone. That was enough. Gone. Just like that. Some say she ran off into the desert, gold sewn into her robe. Others say she never left the shaft at all. You listen, chewing stale bread slowly. You remember seeing her once, briefly, carrying water up from the spring. She had a small scar across her cheekbone, like a crescent moon. That's all. That's all anyone remembers. Later that night you can't sleep. You lie on your back, staring at the woven ceiling, listening to the creak of distant tools, the low murmur of campfires still burning. The air feels heavier, as if the mine itself is breathing. In, out. Pulling you down, you think of that sandal. That bronze cat. That tiny golden filament in your pouch. You wonder if they're watching you. 2. When morning comes, there's a new rule: no personal items near the shaft. All tools must be accounted for. Random checks are enforced. The guards are nervous, snapping at each other. Something's shifted in the hierarchy. Maybe someone reported something. Maybe someone went too far. Still, the mine doesn't stop. The gold won't wait. Your new job today is waste inspection. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? It's not. You sort through heaps of slag, checking for missed fragments. You crush clumps underfoot, dig through blackened dirt with a flat stick. Occasionally, you find something: a flake, a shard, a gleam so faint it disappears when the light changes. Those you place in a small clay bowl for smelter review. Everything else goes back in the pile. You spend hours ankle-deep in the forgotten. The cast-offs of yesterday's glory. It smells like burnt metal and wet stone. Your hands are caked black by noon. You don't even bother washing them before lunch. What would be the point? You're beginning to understand something. Not just how gold is extracted, but how it breaks people. Not all at once. Bit by bit. Like a chisel wearing down stone. You see it in the eyes of the older miners. In the quiet between shifts. In the stories that no one wants to tell twice. That evening, someone plays a stringed instrument near the edge of camp. It's crude, probably strung together from scrap, but the melody is soft, haunting. You sit and listen, grateful for the silence between notes. For a moment, the mind feels far away. Then someone passes by and says, "The gold sings, too." You just haven't heard it yet. You don't respond, but you know you will. The next morning arrives with a pale sun and an eerie stillness. No wind, no voices, not even the usual clatter of pots. Just silence, like the desert itself is holding its breath. You dress slowly, your fingers sticky with yesterday's grime, and make your way toward the center of camp. A messenger from Nepeta has arrived. He's mounted on a donkey that looks just as unimpressed with the journey as you feel about your day. He wears a linen sash too clean for this place and carries a scroll sealed with wax. Official business. Everyone gathers like beetles under a rock, curious, wary. The scroll is read aloud. It's brief. The mining quotas are increasing. Significantly. Orders from the capital. Construction on a new temple demands more tribute. More bricks, more gold. More labor. You can practically hear the collective groan, though no one says a word. The math does itself. More output means longer shifts. Fewer breaks. More danger. And maybe, just maybe, less sleep. But not less punishment. A murmur spreads through the ranks. You overhear someone say, "We'll work until we're dust." Another jokes, "Good. Then we won't need a burial." Nervous laughter follows, too thin to be convincing, but you're already moving. Back to the shafts. Back to the dark. Today's assignment, depth work. A fresh seam's been identified deeper in the network, down a passage no one's entered in months. You and 5 others are chosen to scout it out. The foreman hands you a torch, a pick, and a water skin with barely 2 gulps left. You descend. The tunnel narrows as you go, the walls dripping with condensation, the air turning sour. Your torch flickers. The ceiling lowers until you're forced to crouch. Then crawl. You wonder briefly, what would happen if your torch died? If the others turned back and forgot you, you press on. Eventually, you reach a chamber barely large enough to stand in. Gold dust glimmers faintly in the stone, tiny, like stars smudged across a black sky. One of your team whistles low. "Jackpot," he says, "maybe?" But the rock is dense. The seam runs at a strange angle, curling downward like a spiral. A claustrophobic helix of wealth and ruin. You begin to dig. It's slow going. Every chip sends tiny echoes down the shaft. Sweat drips into your eyes. The torch burns lower. You try not to think about time. But it's hard. You begin to wonder, has it been an hour? 4? A day? Historians still argue whether Nubians used a formal rotation system for deep mining crews or simply worked them until exhaustion, replacing them like interchangeable cogs in a sacred machine. Evidence is sparse. Faded records, damaged tablets, contradictory oral histories. But if they did use shifts, today it sure doesn't feel like it. You surface with black streaked arms and lungs that burn. Someone hands you a crust of bread. You eat it without tasting it. Your mouth is full of sand and silence. That night, a meeting is held in hushed tones. It's not official, of course, nothing ever is. Just a quiet circle of tired eyes and sore limbs, gathering around a dying fire. You're not sure who called it. Maybe no one did. Maybe it just happened. Voices rise softly, then louder. Complaints turn into stories. Stories into questions. How much more can we give? Who decides what we're worth? What happens when the gold runs out, and then someone says it, we should stop? Everyone freezes. It's a whisper. A suggestion. A dangerous one. But it lingers. You feel it too. That tug of resistance. That flicker of something ancient and wild. Not rebellion, just self-preservation. But nothing comes of it. Not yet. The fire dies. The circle dissolves. And the mind remains yawning like a hungry mouth beneath your feet. The next day, the rumors arrive. Someone tried to flee. A worker named Beck. Broad shoulders, quick hands, always laughing. You'd shared a shift with him once, passed a skin of fermented date juice back and forth in the dark. He talked about home, about goats and music and warm bread baked by his sister. Now he's gone. They say he slipped out during night watch, heading west into the dunes. No supplies. Just instinct. Desperation. Madness. Others say he was caught and made an example of. But you've seen no body. No punishment. Just absence. And that's worse, somehow. What they don't tell you, what everyone feels but no one says, is that the desert doesn't have to kill you. Sometimes, the silence out there is kinder than the noise in here. You go back to the shaft that afternoon, but something's shifted. In you. Around you. You pause longer between strikes. Your eyes dart to the corners. You see faces in the stone. Your own reflection in flecks of fool's gold. There's talk now, quiet, scattered, of places farther south. Caves said to contain a different kind of ore. Not gold, but something rarer. Blood metal, someone calls it. Red as rust, light as air. Probably nonsense. But in this world, even lies can sound like hope. You sleep lightly that night. Every creak outside the tent makes you jolt. You clutch the stone you took from the wall days ago, the one near the wrapped bones. It's smooth now from your thumb. Polished by worry, you dream of corridors with no end. Of torches that won't light. Of voices whispering, there is no more gold. And beneath it all, the mountain breathing. The morning begins with dust in your mouth and a shriek in the distance. Not a bird, not a beast, but a human sound, jagged and sharp. You bolt upright, adrenaline overriding the stiffness in your back. Others stir too. No one talks. You just follow the noise. At the mouth of the mine, a crowd is forming, tight and tense. A worker, someone from the southern team, has collapsed. His hands are black, not from dirt but from burns. His breath comes in wet rattles. A medic kneels over him, muttering something about vapors and hot rock. No one says it aloud, but everyone thinks the same thing. The gods are angry again. Later that day, word spreads fast. A strange vein has been struck, glowing faintly when torches get too close. The foreman insists it's a trick of the light. A reflection. But a few old miners say they've seen this before, once, maybe twice. The earth weeps when you dig too deep, one of them mutters, eyes hollow. That glow is fever. The shaft is sealed off by noon. Not for safety, oh no. It's under lock to preserve its purity. Which is code for, some higher up in Nepeta wants it untouched until they can personally come poke it with a royal staff. So now you're reassigned. Again. This time to surface hauling, an endless loop of carrying more baskets up and down the slope under full sun. It's like Stairmaster training invented by someone who hated happiness. You lose count by your third trip. Your feet blister. Your shoulders ache. But you notice something strange during one of the climbs. The camp is quieter, not peaceful. Just hushed. Like everyone's waiting for something. And here's where it gets weirder. You pass the smelter tent and notice a pile of discarded crucibles. More than usual, all cracked. Black veins streak through them, like they'd been infected. A smelter frowns and pokes at the slag with a stick. This metal's wrong, he says to no one in particular. But the gold keeps flowing. You hear talk of a night furnace. Smelting done after dark, supervised by guards with torches and sealed mouths. Why? No one knows. But secrecy always means risk. Or treasure. Or both. One night, after everyone's drifted off, you sneak out. Not to escape, you're not that bold, but just to see. You crouch behind a rock near the smelter tent and wait. Sure enough, they come, 2 workers, silent, flanked by guards. They carry a bundle wrapped in hide, heavy, lumpy. Not ore. Something else. They go inside. The glow of fire flickers behind the tent walls. Then nothing. Just the low hum of bellows, the occasional hiss. You creep closer. There's a gap in the stitching near the back. You peer through. Inside, something glows in the fire. Not gold. Something redder. It pulses faintly, like it's alive. You don't breathe. Don't blink. The metal shimmers and then darkens as one worker pours it into a narrow mold shaped like a ring? A clasp? The guards move, and you're gone before they can spot you. Back in your tent, you lie awake, heart thumping. You tell yourself it was just a different alloy. An experiment. But something inside you squirms. The next day, everything continues as usual. No one speaks of the night furnace. No one asks. Instead, a new decree is issued. Deeper tunnels must be reinforced. Not repaired, reinforced. Which means more hauling, more wood. More workers gone for longer stretches. You're sent down again, back into the spiraling seam, with new tools and fewer instructions. And here, in the depths, things get strange again. The walls hum. Not constantly, not like an echo, but in pulses. Almost like breath. You press your hand against the stone and swear you can feel it vibrating, faint but insistent. A coworker jokes, maybe we're inside something's stomach. No one laughs. That day, you uncover something odd. Not gold. Not even stone. But a section of wall covered in etchings, older than anything you've seen. Not Nubian script. Not Egyptian. Something different. Spirals. Eyes. A figure with too many arms. And circles, so many circles. They almost look like maps, but without landmarks. Just routes and loops. You point it out to the overseer. He tells you to ignore it. You don't. That night, you sketch it in the dirt beside your cot. You stare at it until the shapes blur. You feel like it's saying something, but not in words. In pressure. In weight. Later, you hear that another tunnel team uncovered bones. Not recent ones, old, fossilized almost. In strange poses, arms crossed behind heads, spines arched like dancers. One had gold teeth. Another had a hole perfectly drilled in the forehead, as if waiting for something to be inserted. They buried the bones quietly. But stories have a way of leaking out. An elder claims they're not human. That they're the mine's original owners. That when too much is taken, they come back to take it back. You laugh. Nervously. But you start to notice things, tools missing. Shadows where they shouldn't be. Whispers that don't match the mouths around you. And then one day, your torch won't light. You strike the flint again and again, but the flame won't catch. The air is thick, like soup. And you feel watched. Not by a person, but by the mine. You make it back, eventually. But your breath comes short for the rest of the day. You sit by the fire and clutch your smooth stone like a talisman. The strange glow from that forbidden chamber never really leaves your memory. Nor do the patterns in the wall. You don't know what they mean, but you're beginning to suspect that this mine, this place, is older than kings. Older than gold. Maybe older than gods. And it's still awake. You start to notice that the guards' faces are changing. Not physically, well, maybe a little, but more in their eyes. They're sharper, colder. Like they've seen something they don't dare name. They walk with purpose, not just patrolling but hunting, and their torches carve long shadows that dance at the edge of your vision. One night, you catch a whispered conversation just beyond your tent flap. Did you hear? Someone went missing again. Third this month. No trace. Must be the curse. You scoff quietly, but inside your chest tightens. The word curse floats over the camp like dust, inescapable, unwelcome, but maybe true. You recall the elders' warning about the mine's original owners. Those ancient beings with too many arms and strange eyes. The ones who come back when you take too much. The air grows heavier as you descend deeper into the mine that day. The shafts narrow like fingers squeezing you tighter. The walls sweat salty droplets that trickle down and make your skin itch. Your torch flickers and sputters, threatening to die with every breath. You remember the strange etchings, the spirals and circles, and wonder if they were warnings. if those who carved them understood the hunger beneath your feet better than you do. Halfway through the shift, you come upon a fresh pile of rubble. The debris is oddly clean, like it was recently disturbed. A glint catches your eye, something metallic, embedded in the dust. You dig carefully and uncover a ring, heavy and darkened by age, with symbols matching the strange etchings. You slip it into your pocket, feeling the weight of it like a secret pressing against your skin. Back at camp, rumors swirl faster than dust storms. They say some workers refuse to go back underground, haunted by dreams of voices calling from the stone. Others talk about shadows moving without light, and tools that vanish only to reappear broken and bent. You try to dismiss it, but one evening, while sorting ore, you feel a breath at your neck. You spin, heart pounding, but no one's there. Only the emptiness of the mine's mouth yawning behind you. That night, the nightmares begin. You dream of the mine as a living beast, veins of gold its blood, the bones of the lost scattered like teeth in its jaws. You see hands reaching from the walls, silent and grasping. You hear a voice, low, deep, and ancient, whispering in a language you almost understand. You wake gasping, the ring burning cold in your hand. Days pass, and the whispers don't fade. Instead, they grow louder. You confide in an older miner, who looks at the ring and nods slowly. He tells you it's a keeper, a talisman from the original owners. Protects the wearer from the mine's wrath, but only barely. Historians still argue whether these artifacts were sacred relics or curses meant to bind spirits underground. But what matters to you is this: you don't want to find out which side is right. One morning, a delegation from Nepeta arrives. They inspect the mine with cold eyes and sharp questions. They're here not just for gold, but for control, tightening their grip with every word. Orders come down to speed up production, to ignore superstition, to break the earth's back. You watch as miners exchange worried glances. The ring feels heavier in your pocket. And beneath your feet, something shifts. The days blur into one another. You move through the mine like a ghost, numb, exhausted, and haunted by that ring's cold weight against your skin. The whispers are constant now, curling around your thoughts like smoke. Sometimes you catch yourself talking back in the dark, arguing with voices no one else can hear. The overseers push harder, demanding more output, more speed. The shafts grow longer, narrower, more treacherous. You see workers stumble and fall, their cries swallowed by the stone. The camp's usual noise has quieted into an uneasy hum, like the calm before a storm. One evening, you sit outside your tent, staring into the smoldering embers of the fire. The ring in your palm seems to pulse faintly. A heartbeat syncing with your own. You feel connected to the mine in a way you never expected, like the earth itself is reaching out through this piece of metal. That night, you dream again, only this time it's different. You're no longer a trapped miner but a figure with many arms, tracing the spirals and circles in the stone. You move with purpose, carving runes that glow with ancient power. You feel the pulse of the mine's breath, the rhythm of gold veins flowing beneath. You wake sweating, the dream lingering like a half-remembered song. The next day, something shifts. A tremor shakes the mine, sending dust and pebbles raining down. The workers freeze, faces pale in the flickering torchlight. The foreman orders an evacuation, but no one moves. The mine seems to hold them captive, the walls humming with a low, angry vibration. You see the old miner from before clutch his chest and collapse, his eyes wide with fear. They're waking, he whispers before slipping into unconsciousness. Whispers among the workers turn to rumors of a curse breaking free. Some speak of the ancient owners rising from their slumber, claiming what was taken. Others say the mine itself is alive, angry and hungry. You remember the bones, the strange etchings, the red metal from the night furnace. All the pieces click together like a puzzle made of shadows. You realize the mine is not just a hole in the earth but a living story, a violent, restless history that refuses to be forgotten. The overseers demand more gold. The workers tremble. And you hold the ring, a fragile bridge between past and present. The question hangs in the air: How long before the earth answers back? The tremors worsen. The mind groans, like some giant beast stirring from a deep slumber. Dust clouds swirl, filling your lungs with grit and fear. Each shift begins with a prayer, whispers to the gods, the ancestors, or whatever spirit might be listening beneath the cracked stone. Work becomes a test of wills. The deepest tunnels collapse without warning, sending cascades of rock and screams echoing through the labyrinth. You dodge falling debris, hard hammering, and think bitterly that maybe the mine is finally fighting back. Night falls, but sleep is a stranger. You pace the camp, clutching the ring, feeling its cold pulse against your palm, like a heartbeat synced with the earth itself. Around you, whispers grow louder, stories passed from one weary mouth to another. One tale haunts you most, about the original owners of the mine, creatures not quite human, with too many arms and eyes that never blink. Some say they were ancient gods, others say spirits bound by blood and stone. Either way, they were said to protect the gold and punish those who dared steal it without respect. You wonder if those old etchings were warnings, or prayers, or curses. One morning, the overseers announce an inspection. The capital sends priests and officials to judge the mine's productivity and discipline. They walk through the camp like gods among mortals, eyes sharp and cold. You watch them pass, feeling the weight of their disdain. To them, you're just labor, replaceable, expendable. But the priests carry something new: incense, strange symbols, and a voice that chants deep and low. They move through the tunnels, sprinkling powder and muttering blessings, or curses disguised as blessings. You wonder if their rituals soothe the mind or stir it more. Later, at the end of the day, you overhear a heated argument between the priests and the overseers. The priests want to stop work until the mine is cleansed. The overseers scoff, citing quotas and royal commands. You know which side will win. That night, a storm breaks over the desert. Lightning flashes, thunder rattles the tents, and wind howls like a beast in pain. The mine seems to roar in response, trembling violently. In the chaos, a collapse blocks the main exit. Panic erupts. Workers shout for loved ones, scramble for torches, and brace for the worst. You and a handful of others scramble through narrow escape routes, coughing, blinded by dust. The ring burns hot in your pocket, like it's trying to warn you. Finally, you emerge, gasping and blinking into the storm's cold night. The mine is silent now, too silent. And for the first time, you realize this place doesn't just hold gold. It holds secrets. Secrets that won't stay buried. You wake to a different rhythm now. There's no constant scrape of picks, no hiss of bellows, just a slow hum of wind across empty corridors. The mine lies silent, save for the faint drip of water through fractured stone. Your bones ache as always, reminders of every tunnel, every shaft, every smoldering furnace you ever touched. But the pain is different. It's memory, not threat, a dull echo of what once was. You stand at the edge of the ancient dig site, dust swirling in the early light. Modern archaeologists have come here, their tools delicate and precise, unlike the crude hammers and chisels you once wielded. They map the tunnels you labored in, recording each narrow ramp, each collapsed chamber, each shrine you and others once left offerings at. They brush away centuries of sand to reveal your handprints, carved names, crude spirals, stars and circles just as you first encountered. You watch them work, curious how their gentle strokes can uncover secrets that once demanded sweat and blood. A mainstream historical fact surfaces in a conversation between two archaeologists. Evidence suggests that by 1000 BC, Nubian gold mines supplied nearly half of Egypt's gold reserves, fueling lavish funerary trimmings and temple ornamentation. They trace ancient trade routes to Thebes and Memphis, showing how your toil connected kingdoms across the Nile. Those caravans you glimpsed in weren't merely merchants. They were messengers of opulence, carrying your stolen hope in stacked bars weighing down camels. You remember the slaves and free laborers who argued about social status. Were we slaves or hired hands? They still debate today. Historians still argue whether Nubian miners were predominantly coerced by Egyptian conquest or whether local dynasties, like the Kingdom of Kerma, organized labor voluntarily, rewarding skilled workers with land and livestock. The truth dangles between written records mostly from Egyptian scribes and local oral traditions that vanished with time. You half smile at the irony. Your memories may have died with you, but now words and bones speak for you. Those archaeologists find more than just gold veins. In an old chamber near the Crooked Eye, they uncover a small bronze cat statue dated to 1200 BC, a guardian figurine you once heard rumored about. They marvel at its craftsmanship, speculate it was an offering to Batet or a local spirit. Yet whispers in academic journals wonder, was it never meant for gods but for miners themselves, to guard against collapses? That's the fringe tidbit that tickles your memory. Stories of animals dropping gold, unique spiritual beliefs blending Egyptian and Nubian deities, the way odd remedies and amulets circulated among weary miners like you described it. Now you wander through their camp as they record vestiges of meals, charred millet husks, donkey bones tucked beside a communal hearth where once you shared tense silences with fellow workers. They're tracing dietary patterns, one says, to understand malnutrition and health hazards. You recall the dusty trenches, the choking dust that gave miners rock lung, the scrawny rations of sorghum beer and salted fish. You shiver imagining how they'll reconstruct your brittle frame from tiny fragments of bone long hidden beneath rubble. Enough tourists gather near a pit where an excavation unit has exposed a collapsed nest of wooden beams, remnants of a support system that once gave your comrades a sliver of safety. The sign reads, Early Nubian Mine Reinforcements, 900 BC. You think of when you scrape slag from worn pathways, encountering those faded symbols etched by earlier hands. Now they're annotated with labels, protective spiroglyph, terracing technique, pulleys and ramps. Names that once carried urgency now float like ghostly captions over your life's painful footage. A small group watches as an archaeologist carefully lifts a bone fragment, its edges smooth but its purpose once cryptic, maybe an offering. Maybe a discarded leg of a donkey. They hypothesize about ritual burials, sacrifice, labor-death tolls. Historians still argue whether bodies found in those shafts were ritualistically placed as part of mining rites or were merely casualties of collapses, buried in haste to keep production running. You wonder which is truer, the notion that miners gave their lives willingly as a price for divine favor or that they were buried by negligence, victims of an empire's insatiable greed. Your path leads you to the melting area, now an open-air exhibit. The blackened furnace stands silent, its bellows gone, its clay dome long since weathered. Nearby, a plaque reads, Here, Nubian miners smelted or using charcoal and animal dung. 10th century BC. You remember tending those blazing fires, your feet stomping bellows, the boy pumping beside you, coughs rattling like distant thunder. Now the space feels small, almost peaceful, as if the world outside these walls is unaware of what once happened here. You pause beside a fractured crucible piece, worn thin by repeated heating. You run a finger along its edge, recalling how the liquid gold once pooled, fiery and bright. Hunters for gold, they called you. Now your story is reduced to shards in a display case, accompanied by text. Artifacts rescued from collapsing tunnels testify to ancient technological prowess and human cost. You sense a pang of pride, but it's tinged with sorrow. The cost was far too high. Beyond the smelter exhibit, they've laid out pottery shards marked with scribbles, graffiti left by miners who joked about rock spirits or sketched crude maps of vein corridors, scribbles you once saw. They thought they were invisible in the dark. Now their doodles are studied by scholars drafting papers about early literacy and miner communication. At dusk, you leave the dig site and walk where the camp once stood. Only sand and crumbling mud brick towers remain. A few local children play among broken axes, pretending they're miners, reciting names they've heard, Kush, Kerma, Nubia. They've grown up hearing legends of hidden gold. They don't know how much suffering it took to pull that metal from the earth. Maybe they'll dig deeper and find your scarred bones or your carved spirals. Maybe they'll name you unknown miner, a footnote in a larger narrative. You think of the descendants of those miners, some live in a nearby village. Their eyes flicking with pride and resignation when they pass through this site. They plant millet fields where once black ash gathered. They recall stories, pass on tales of how gold made kings rich and miners poor. Quirky local lore still thrives, that if you whisper to the wind here, you'll hear the clinking of picks long silenced and catch a glimpse of spirits roaming the tunnels. A final thought settles in your mind. Legacy is not solely in gold bars or museum displays. It's in the scars of the land, the stories that refuse to die, the debates that rage over choices made so long ago. You turn and look back toward the entrance of the mine, where shadows lengthen and the horizon glows amber. The sun dips, casting long silhouettes down the ancient shafts. For a heartbeat you feel that old pull, gold's silent call, still echoing after millennia. And you understand, at last, that though your body no longer labors here, your spirit lingers in every carved glyph, every stray bit of ore, every whisper of wind through these caverns. This place remembers you. And those who come after will continue to unravel your story, piece by fragile piece, just as you once chipped away at rock hoping for a flicker of treasure. The desert light softens as night falls, painting the sand in gentle hues of pink and lavender. Here, silence envelopes you like a warm blanket, and the lingering dust settles. The lore of the mines, the ache in your bones, and every sentence carved into stone recede into a calm lullaby. Imagine resting now, laying down burdens you carried for years, each pick strike forgiven, each collapsed tunnel quieted. Your breath slows as the wind hums its ancient tune, a melody crafted by shifting sands and settling stone. No longer do you feel the sting of dust in your lungs or the weight of a basket on your back. Instead, you sense the soothing pulse of time itself, guiding you toward rest. The ghosts of fellow miners fade into soft silhouettes, and the memory of bellows and roaring fires becomes a distant whisper. It's as if the earth itself sighs, content that your story has woven itself into its tapestry. Now, picture eyes closing gently, darkness cradling you. Feel the cool hush of night air brushing against your skin. Every creak in the mine, every tremor you once feared, has stilled. You drift, weightless, beyond stone and sorrow, into a realm of quiet peace. May your dreams carry you through endless dunes of rest, where gold's promise transforms into golden warmth. Close your eyes, release the day's dust and clamor, and surrender to the soothing hush. Sleep comes now, enveloping you softly, humming the final verse of an ancient song. Let your body rest, let tomorrow's sun wait.